Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coaches Club podcast brought to you by halftimecuppa.com. My name is Danny Cook and we're back yet again with another fantastic guest talking about their coaching journey. And today we have Tristan Thomas, who I'll introduce in a second, and he's going to share his story with us. So stay tuned for that. Of course, before we begin, you can catch up on any of our previous episodes on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and our website at halftimecuppa.com. Simply on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, just search the podcast name and it will come up from there. So without further ado, Tristan Thomas, how are you?
I'm good, Danny. Thanks very much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How's lockdown keeping you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, it's been a bit different for me. I've come out to Sweden just over a month ago. So lockdown in the UK was pretty normal, similar to everyone else. Although I was doing a bit of work in a school, doing some kind of PE sort of lessons for key worker children. But yeah, did a bit of coaching, some one-to-one sessions, and then got the call to come out to Sweden. So I've been here for just over a month now, and they didn't really have lockdown at all in Sweden. So it was quite surreal first coming out here and seeing people, going about their daily lives as usual.
Yeah, that must have felt weird, just seeing that.
Yeah, it was really, really odd. Like people like not having masks on and stuff like that. However, the town I'm actually in, well, it's not even a town, it's a village really. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the north. It's about 5 hours drive from Stockholm, and there's not much going on at all. So it's basically like being locked down anyway, to be quite honest. There's like a little shop and a pizzeria and stuff like that, but apart from that, there's it's just football.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds nice and peaceful. So yeah, I guess really the best place to start would be the very, very beginning and how you got into coaching and why and what sort of led to you starting, really.
Yeah, of course. So obviously growing up, massive football fan from the age of 0, basically. Always watched the game and then played a bit as well. And then when I got to a certain age, I stopped playing and did some refereeing as well. And then I got into the sort of like football writing and in particular the tactical and analytical side of the game. I read a lot of articles online and some books and things like that, and watched some videos on sort of, yeah, like I said, the tactical side of the game, and that really took my interest. So I tried to develop that side of things, and started writing myself quite a lot, and then began writing for a few websites, one of it which is a German-owned website, Spielverlagerung, but wrote in English on there. And a lot of the guys on there as well, they'd got into coaching, and they were like, it's something you've got to do, get into coaching, because obviously then you can use that kind of tactical background of things and really put it into practice, and it'll help with your tactics writing as well. So I thought, that sounds like a good idea. So I did my level 1 and volunteered under 7s, just like a local club near me in Essex.
Nice.
Which was obviously very, very different, going from analysing like top level professional matches, coaching under 7s. It's almost a complete sport, isn't it? But, yeah. So, and then kind of just took off from there, and then so I did that, and then I finished my A-levels at 18, and then I went out to America. I went out to the States. I was there for 2 years, coaching with a club out there in Boston in the Northeast, coaching players of all ages, all abilities as well. But like the longer I was there, the more responsibility I was given, and I had the chance to coach some better players and some very, very good players, to be honest, and some good teams, and learn from a few very experienced coaches, which was a fantastic experience for me. And I've still got contacts that I made out in America that are that I can go to now for coaching advice or speak to about coaching, and people that have become very, very good friends. So I was very privileged, and then I come back and picked up coaching in the UK. I worked at Aldershot Town in the academy with the 18s and 23s assistant, but also leading with the under 13s. I coached obviously with you at ASL, a private school in London, central North London. Great experience. Again, kind of took me back to America, working with American players, and yeah, a variety of different kind of places in England, because I couldn't pick up a role sort of full time because there's very, very little of that in the UK, unless you're the top coach with loads of experience. So I was coaching at different clubs and companies. I worked at Guerva for a bit, every single day, and then which led me to a role that I had at Soccer Chance Academy, where I worked with one of your previous guests, Ricky. Yeah. Worked there all of last season. Started just over a year ago there, which was a fantastic experience, working with 16 to 19-year-olds from North London. Coaching 11v11 every day was brilliant, and then alongside some other coaching on the weekends and evenings.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, there's so many talking points from that. I've got things noted down. And yeah, I kind of want to. I will bring up the reffing in a bit, but I kind of want to start with the tactical writing, because that's such an interesting way that you got into it. The tactical writing element, was it a case of you was watching a game and you was like, this player should be here instead, and or their shape looks a little bit off, and then you just decided to turn it into written content or turn it into pieces of content, and then you just sort of progressed from there, really?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I can't remember the exact moment or day where I kind of really it sparked my interest. I suppose it was just through taking more of a view of the game, through a lot of the writing I was reading, because I was sort of very young when I started. It's like maybe as young as 14, 15 years old, 13, 14, 15. And obviously having more access to the internet and reading articles and on football in general, when there must have been sort of more tactically focused articles that took my interest. And then that's how I sort of started getting into reading up on that side of the game, obviously playing for a bit of Football Manager as well.
Always helps, doesn't it? Always helps.
It always helps, seeing all these positions and players and tactics and formations and obviously that lighting a kind of a fire within you to kind of want to develop your knowledge of the game. That definitely pushed me on. And then I just thought I want to give this a go myself. So started writing. Obviously, the first few articles probably very, very poor. I don't know if they're still out there on the internet. If they are, please don't go and read them. Probably, yeah. But obviously, you've got to start somewhere, and where I think it's human nature. It's probably not just me being a perfectionist, but where you're putting something out there for everybody to read. You want it to be of high quality, and you want it. You don't want to put something out there on the internet that is low quality, or you haven't put everything into, because then that obviously gives an impression of yourself to other people. So then you go and watch the game, you study even more, just to make every single thing you put out there as good as possible, basically, and as correct as possible and as detailed as possible tactically. So then just kind of developing my own knowledge of the game that way.
Yeah, I can imagine that was very useful. Certainly for your later coaching roles, maybe not your under sevens.
Yeah.
But is it something that you would suggest and you'd recommend to people to have a go, even if it's not publicly publishing some of the content, but even just watching and trying to tactically analyze a game?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose people can kind of get into football and get into coaching through two separate ways. Like, one, obviously enjoying working with kids and working with people and building relationships and that side of things. And then there's the other angle of people that are very kind of analytically minded and focused on maybe professional game or 11v11 and or very academic and stuff like that. But if you can kind of marry the two, so if you're someone that works very well with children or people of all ages and can structure a good session and has a good knowledge of how to develop a player, maybe individually or technically, then that's definitely something that you can do, tactically analyze a game to kind of expand your skill set, basically, and enable you to work at different ages and enable, because even like with maybe not under sevens, but maybe very young players, there still are tactics in play. I'm not saying you should set them up in a rigid formation and
doing low blocks, high blocks, and all sorts.
I'm a player, they're not arriving in between the lines at the right moment and stuff like that. But if something as simple as a 1-2 pass, or something as simple as moving to create space or dribbling into space, it's all tactics, and it all kind of the bits of the puzzle that add up to build to the end product, the end player at 18, 19, 20 years old. So it's definitely something that I'd encourage people to do. Like, obviously, if you can, send it to someone or put it out there on the internet. Twitter, in my opinion, is great for that. People will read it and hopefully give constructive feedback. And obviously send it to maybe a coaching mentor or someone at the FA or someone that works at a good level at a club or an academy, to give you feedback. Definitely I just recommend that as a way to develop your knowledge in football.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, of all the guests we've had on so far, I don't think anyone's really sort of mentioned that as kind of their route in. So that's really interesting. I mean, to be honest, I'm tempted to give it a try myself, but we'll see. I want to go back to the reffing side of it as well. When did you start reffing, out of interest? Like, what age?
When I started.
It was about 13. Sorry, I think we lost the mic there.
Yeah. 13, 14. I think I was 14. My birthday's in May, and I think it was the summer of my 14th birthday that I did the refereeing course, whatever the first one is, level 7 or something, isn't it?
You come as a level 7, yeah. So how was that for you, and how long did you keep up with refereeing for?
I refed kind of properly, so like most weekends until I was maybe 16, 17. And then obviously, like, for a 14, 15-year-old, like, as you know yourself, what age did you start refereeing?
I was similar age, 14. I think earliest you could be, really.
As you know, like £20, £25 is not bad money, is it, for someone of that age?
It's good.
I mean, a couple of hours on a weekend, I know, especially if you can, get 2 games in on a day or something like that. So it's good money. But then, when I become 16, 17, I got a different job working in a pub, purely just to, because it's more hours, more money. So the reffing had to move to one side for a bit. But I kind of always kept it up. Like, even when I went to America and then came back to kind of get some money and fill some time, I've refereed games, the last couple of years, like college games and stuff like that. So, but properly, I kind of only ref for a few years, but I think I had too much of maybe a competitive edge to kind of want to go into reffing properly and work down the level 654 and properly go down that route. I think, like I said, the coaching and the tactical side of the game really kind of sparked my interest, and it's just one of those things. It's just, I enjoyed that, and I was probably better at that, to be honest, than I was at refereeing.
Yeah, I mean, having shared a bit of that experience as well, and kind of gone from reffing to coaching, for me, I think it was more a case of I wanted to work with people rather than people just having a dig, like, for no reason. Like, I'd rather work with people and try and develop and see progress week on week. I think, like, I don't know if you ever had the experience to have proper, like, not parents, but proper linesmen or proper assistants, and I was lucky to have that on a couple of occasions, and that was quality. But I think going out by yourself was a bit difficult at times.
Very different, but I suppose, like, especially my first ever game refereeing, I was 14, like I said, and I think I was refereeing under 14, so 13 and 14-year-olds.
Oh, Jesus, that must have been hard.
Exactly. I was kind of chucked straight in the deep end. I think even like back then, it was there was probably less of the kind of protection or bubble that there is now. with trying to get referees into the game, and I can see why, you know, there are so few referees, and the FA are having a problem recruiting referees, because, you know, it was a typical Sunday league, and like I said, like even now I think there's a lot more education in terms of coaching, and to be fair, it's not even education that's needed, it's just not being an absolute
tool.
So like the coaches, obviously I made some horrendous decisions, like as you would, and as I'm sure you know, you're probably a much better ref than I am, as I'm sure you did.
Well, you've not seen me ref, so
as you know, as everyone probably does in their first few games, I made some you know, terrible decisions, and obviously at that level or that age group as well, you know, you get dug out and you get abuse shouted at you, and you have to deal with that at that young age. So it's massive in terms of, you know, dealing with adversity and dealing with people, and, you know, creating a kind of thick skin to then go into, you know, life and also football.
In terms of, like, I mean, I feel like you've bottled that really nicely. You've summed that up nicely. But you obviously reffing players that are potentially your age or just a year younger. I mean, that must have felt quite nerve-wracking, I guess, to start off with, and it must have been really difficult.
Yeah, no, it was. Of course, it was a bit nerve-wracking, but I think, you know, in life, I like that kind of, you know, feeling in the pit of your stomach that you're throwing yourself out of your comfort zone, and I think you never kind of progress as a person until you've done that. You know, that's how you get better, by making mistakes, by putting yourself out there, by, you know, taking yourself out of your comfort zone, like I mentioned, and then, you know, to kind of really nicely swing that back into a coaching chat. That's what, as coaches, we can encourage our players to do, especially if we're coaching players of that age, get into something like refereeing, you know, or whatever age, do something externally that throws yourself out of your comfort zone, or even within your own sessions and games, can you like, you know, design practices and do certain things to push players out their comfort zone, and to make things difficult, and to make them, you know, to challenge them mentally to overcome obstacles. So yeah, definitely that was a massive life lesson for me, you know, being thrown into that environment at that age, and, you know, how it made me a stronger person.
I love that. Was there anything else that you sort of transferred from reffing into coaching?
I suppose maybe a slight kind of empathy of how difficult it is to referee. Maybe recently, that's kind of, I've lost that. I've got less of that, but yeah, no, I think some of, like I said, the abuse that referees get is absolutely horrible, especially, you know, if they've just started out, or if it's, you know, not a very, very high level. Like, I'm sure, like, even if I was awful refereeing that first game, I'm sure there's players on the pitch that had much worse performances playing and made loads of mistakes, but you know, in the spotlight as much, and didn't get the same sort of you know, abuse held towards them that the referee would. So yeah, maybe I was a bit more understanding of referees going into coaching, and, you know, obviously wouldn't be the sort of coach to call out a referee. You know, just control what you can control.
Yeah, that's really nicely put. Your first coaching role, as you say, was the under sevens. How was it going into that? Obviously, you've not really, I presume to this point, you hadn't really had much coaching experience, so it was your first real sort of chance to get hands on. Did any thoughts going into that? Was you nervous?
Yeah, completely different. Again, completely different. Like, it's just weird. It's like anything really. Now I've kind of got a bit more experience coaching, thinking back to not knowing a single thing, like even like, you know, how to mark out an area, or what to do as a warm up, or literally anything. Especially, you know, my background in the game had been myself playing not a great level with coaches that weren't very good. So it's not like I could think back to my own days and put on the sessions that the coaches did, because, you know, the coaches, you know, they weren't the best coaches in the world, to be quite honest, the ones that I had. And obviously I don't think I was coached when I was under 7, 8, 9. I think I first probably started playing football competitively at maybe 9 or 10 years old. So I couldn't really think back to how I was coached, or the sessions that I was put into, because to be honest, I wouldn't want to put kids that I was coaching through that. It was very, very different working with kids as well, learning how to speak to children, and obviously, as it's complete psychology working with that age. Forget football, it's kids will do the complete opposite of what you tell them to. So what you've got to do is try and find a way of saying things or demonstrating or just using psychology basically to get them to do what you think is best for them in terms of football, to develop them as individuals. But even that kind of piece, going in at that age and only having the level 1 qualification under my belt, like this is before the FA changed the courses, the level 1, level 2. Like I know for a fact now they're much more, they're much better basically, especially geared towards, coaching children and younger children. I didn't really have a full understanding of, at that age, it wasn't about kind of winning or even playing good football or passing or anything like that. It was more, or in my opinion anyway, about making sure each child has fun and each child gets lots of touches on the football to develop them technically, and gets experiences to play in different positions, against different teams and, different formats, 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 and stuff like that. So, what I'd give to know all that stuff back then. But then obviously that's not a challenge, and that's what makes you better, and it's a good place to kind of experiment and work and make mistakes, because it's not under any real pressure really.
And that's all part of the journey. So how long was you with them? Was it just a 1 season thing, or did you stick around with them for a little while?
Yeah, it was probably maybe 1.5 seasons. I coached them up until I left really, to go to America when I finished my A-levels. So I was coaching at my school as well. I went to a school where year 7 to 13 were all together, so like a sixth form college as part of a school. So I was coaching with the year 7 team as well.
Oh, nice.
Last year there, which was good. A good experience doing that as well. But yeah, I coached that under 7s team, 1 session and 1 game a week for probably about 18 months. I did that and saw some progression, some success, but obviously, as I mentioned, I kind of really didn't know anything at the time. But yeah, it's something that I certainly enjoyed, and it's an experience that put me in good stead, definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure it set you up nicely for going over to the US. Before you sort of moved over there, was the US something that you'd always sort of had planned longer term, or was it just something that you just sort of saw a couple months before you got your results?
Yeah, honestly, no, I didn't really even know that it was kind of a thing to go out and coach or play in America as an English person. I hadn't really considered it or anything like that. It was just, as I was doing, I didn't do my A-levels and anything to do with sport really. I did geography, politics and economics. But then obviously I was doing the coaching and a lot of writing on the side and analysis at this point as well. I was doing like opposition scouting as well within the lower leagues and within non-league and stuff. So I was kind of really building up the scouting and analysis side of the game as well. So what was I going to say? Yeah, so I didn't really see university as a route I wanted to go down. I was kind of maybe done with education, at least for 1 year, at least for maybe, do a year, then go back to university. I had a couple of offers to go to universities and stuff. And I kind of made a promise to myself that if I didn't have any coaching full-time or decent kind of coaching role lined up by the time I got my results for my A-levels, which is obviously in August, then I'd just go to university and just do like a sports coaching or whatever it was, sports, an ex-science degree. But yeah, luckily I got a Skype call about 2 weeks before I got my results, maybe not even that, from a club out in America that I'd applied for online, saying, yeah, basically we'd like to have you out to coach a few teams and do some what's called sort of clinics as well on the side, like basically coaching sessions, local community coaching sessions, and also work, within our office basically as well of the club, doing some like building curriculum and creating sessions for coaches and stuff like that. So yeah, I went out to America in August 2016, and yeah,
And you never looked back then, really.
basically
Basically.
that was
No.
the start of it. I again, like same as the referee, and that was an experience that, you know, took me out my comfort zone, especially initially. I'd never kind of lived away from home or anything like that. You know, getting on a plane to, you know, the other
side of the world, yeah.
you know, it took a lot, but because I had experiences like refereeing and that first under sevens coaching session, I didn't know what I was doing behind me. That kind of builds you up to make you know, take more risks and you know, put yourself feet first into more kind of experiences. So yeah, that kind of really set me up, you know, going out to America and being there full time and working like literally 7 days a week, lots of hours, so many coaching hours out in America, you know, developing every day, every week there. So yeah, it's definitely something that I don't regret doing at all.
Brilliant. And you know, whilst you was out there, what sort of challenges did you face by living in the US compared to like the UK?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, one, like driving on the other side of the road, even things like that. I've never done that before until I went out there. And it was the club I worked at. It was a million miles an hour. There'd so many teams and so many kind of like sessions that they had to organise and things like that, and a lot of staff as well. That, you know, it was literally a case of just being handed a set of keys like 2 hours before my session, my first ever session. I had I think it was like an under 10s group when I first went out there. It was a decent group, to be fair, some good players. Yeah, just being handed a set of keys and then saying, you know, get up the road with a bag of balls and a bag of cones and yeah, sort of see you later kind of
Good
thing.
luck.
Yeah, and I went to a pitch where you know, I didn't know any of these players. I've never met them before, never met the parents. It was sort of all kind of done over email previously. So yeah, kind of had to meet them, introduce myself, and put on a session, and I started coaching that team. Yeah, other challenges in the States, maybe working a lot, kind of managing your time between working in an office, doing some hours in a day while I was, like I said, I was working in what was called the technical department. And then I worked my way up to a role as basically kind of technical director for the Northeast and for New England, the club, which was, you know, a lot of teams, a lot of coaches. So I was like running CPD events and stuff, and putting out a lot of content to basically try and develop the coaches and create more of a unity with how all the teams played, and kind of spread the coaching philosophy of the club. Because as I mentioned, there were so many coaches and a lot of them may be doing their own thing. So to kind of educate, particularly American coaches, local coaches who hadn't had a vast kind of experience in coaching or weren't as well read in terms of, you know, pedagogy and child development and player development and the tactical side of the game as well. Like doing that filled up a lot of my time, and then obviously coaching my own teams as well. Like there was a stage where I was coaching 3 teams, you know, over all the days of the week, in the evenings and weekends as well, tournaments, matches. But again, that kind of work that I put in was great for me because I was gathering so many coaching hours. So, you know, maybe there's people that had been coaching for many years in, you know, different places, different countries, but you know, if you've done more coaching hours than them, you know, you're probably more experienced. You've had more hours on the grass. And I was literally, you know, coaching 15, 20 hours a week, some weeks, you know, 3-4 hours every night on the grass, which, as I said, was really good for my development as a coach. And like I said as well, coaching some good players. Like there's some very talented players out in the States. I think it's just when they get to a certain age, they kind of are missing a bit. It's not as professional here in terms of the academy system, and obviously it's a big country, so the talent is very much spread out, and you've got to travel hours and hours to maybe play a team that is of the same level as you, you know, competition wise. Whereas obviously, as we know, in England, there's 92 professional clubs, all, in a relatively small country. So the talent is very condensed, and there's a lot of competition and a lot of very good coaches. In America, it's slightly different, more spread out. The players are there, but it's just getting them all in one place, which is a challenge.
Yeah, there's your geography at sixth form coming into play. I want to press on the culture. What was the culture like? Because a lot of people said there's clear differences between coaching in the US and coaching in the UK. Is that something that you noticed at all?
Yeah, massive differences. In the US, so basically the club that I was at, it's a pay to play sort of model. So basically, where, like, carrying on from my last point as well, where in England you either play sort of Sunday football at an okay level, or you're good enough to go and play for your local academy team. And as I mentioned, in London, there's probably, 20 professional academies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many in there.
throughout the leagues. So, there's a lot of kind of options for you if you've got talent. Like in America, it's not like that. There's, I don't know how many, 24, 30 MLS clubs, something like that, for a whole country, a country of, hundreds of millions of people over a very, very large area. So that's where the kind of pay to play model fits in, where parents will pay good money, to be honest, to have their child train 2-3 times a week and play a game as well, playing tournaments, and get good coaches, quote unquote good coaches from Europe a lot of the time, maybe coaches like me that hadn't actually had a vast experience, but obviously had a British accent, so therefore they must know absolutely everything about football. Because the college system in the States promotes sports massively, obviously, so you can get a college scholarship, and it's a bit more expensive out there. There's a lot of angry people speaking about tuition fees in the UK, but in America it's, I think, something like $50,000 at some universities for 1 year. So, and it's 4 years in America as well. So if you can get 50 grand off a year, 4 years, you can do the maths. It's worth the money paying for a player to get decent coaching throughout and decent kind of competition and exposure throughout their childhood, so they can maybe go and get a college scholarship. So that's one of the massive kind of cultural differences. And then with that, because parents are paying big money, there's a lot of pressure. For the club to have a high level of professionalism. There's a lot of pressure for the coaches to not even coach well, just to kind of because you're talking about a very uneducated kind of customer. So there's the economics knowledge coming in from A level.
It's all coming out today.
Exactly. So it wasn't such a waste of time after all, doing those subjects. You've got a what would you call it, a non-perfect market, because you've got consumers, the parents, who are very uneducated. So therefore, the businesses, the clubs can charge big money for some things that maybe aren't very good. So a lot of coaches in America that are successful, and I've got kind of names and faces going through my head right now that I won't, put on air, coach with or kind of carry themselves with this big front, be very much kind of a people person or a good business person, rather than actually a good football person and good coach. And then it was kind of in this big club with lots of coaches, very, very difficult to find people that were actually football people and did care about the kids and were, interested in pursuing football properly and coaching properly, versus those that were, just there for the lifestyle or the money or that kind of side of the game. Because, if you're a British person, you can go out to the States and earn a very good living in coaching, whether that be at a college or a club or doing one-to-one sessions or whatever it is. So that's the difference in the culture, where soccer is a middle class sport. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money involved. Obviously, there's a lot of money here in the UK, but that's mostly at the professional level and at the top level and the adult level. Whereas US, it kind of goes all the way through, and there's probably actually more money at the youth club level than there is at the top level.
In terms of that pressure you mentioned, is that pressure, does that translate into results, or are parents more focused on performance and development? Like, is there much focus on results there?
That's the thing. Like, to be fair, same as here, it's all about parent education. Like, there is a big focus on results externally from the parents, because as an uneducated football parent would think, if your team's winning games, they're doing something better. Obviously, at a kid's level, that's not the case. Development is more important than winning, and development often will take the place of winning. Especially if, to take quite an obvious example, a team is kind of playing long ball or has one very, very good player, and they're always playing to that player, and the players aren't taken out of their comfort zones and played different positions or given equal minutes purely, because the result is the main focus, then, it's going to take a big toll on the player's actual development. So there's that external pressure from the parents, but then also internally, potentially from the club, because where it's a business, if you're seen to be winning games and tournaments and leagues and stuff like that, the management of the club may feel that that's a good way to kind of market the club and get players to join the club. So yeah, there is that pressure there, but if you can kind of stay true to your principles, I never really let that get to me. I always was focused on development and winning, because I knew, what I wanted to achieve in football was without sounding too kind of maybe arrogant, was a lot bigger than just an under-8s league in the middle of Boston, Massachusetts. So I'm really focused on development, and I had good people there and good mentors and stuff, that I could speak to about coaching and development and what was best, for the children.
Looking back at your time in the US, what couldn't they do to kind of improve the state of the game? Would it be improve the understanding of parents in terms of making them more educated, or improving the coaching standards, doing more CPD work? Like, is there any sort of feedback you'd give the country as a whole in terms of their football?
Yeah, well, if I was going to write a letter to Donald Trump on how...
tell Trump how they're going to do it.
Winning World Cup, because I know that's probably the top of his priority. It's probably a whole nother kind of podcast, and there's whole websites and podcasts dedicated to this very thing. How the US can kind of improve its soccer, and there's a lot of things. Main things, maybe, I do think the kind of pay to play model and the exclusivity of it takes away from the game. I think if it was more inclusive in terms of there was more access to the game and a good standard of coaching for players from poorer backgrounds, then that would potentially improve the state of play out there and improve the chances of the national team, etc. I think there's been more of this, less of a focus on college, in terms of, for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, a talented player, maybe 5-10 years ago, they'd be obsessed with going to Stanford or Harvard or Michigan, or a top Division 1 or Ivy League university to go and play soccer and get a scholarship and get a top class education on the side of it. I think now, because obviously you've got examples such as Christian Pulisic, who went from America, but obviously because of his family, he had a European passport, so he went and played in Germany with Borussia Dortmund from a young age and developed there. And you've got numerous other examples, Weston McKennie. You've got Canadian player Alphonso Davies, who's tearing it up at the moment in the Bundesliga.
Incredible player him. Yeah.
So obviously, you've got the talent there, but before maybe they'd go to play college, and I'm not sure how much and the listeners know about that kind of system, but it's only on for a few months a year, and the level of competitions maybe not great, but they're only playing from kind of September, October, November, similar to our season at the ASL. It's like the American soccer sports season. So therefore, players are missing out on development throughout that whole time. The rest of the year. What else could they improve? To be fair, I think they're ahead of the UK and Europe in many respects in terms of the facilities. Facilities are top class. Like every middle school and high school will have like a full 3G pitch, artificial pitch that players that can go and play on, or people can literally jump on the weekends or on evenings, and there's no problem. Whereas, as you know, in the UK, you've got to pay $1, especially down in London, to get a decent facility, and they're all locked up and stuff like that. So they're far ahead in other aspects. Also, the fact that the children play multiple different sports, because soccer's not always the main focus, is good. I think that kind of improves like the physical literacy side of things, and coordination and balance and tactical things as well. If you've got a player playing like basketball, for example, like I noticed that like the players I coached in the States that played basketball on the side that had a great understanding of space and movement and timing. And then some players that played like ice hockey, for example, that were very combative players on the football pitch that weren't as afraid of kind of aggression and physicality and that side of things. So, yeah, the fact that they play multiple sports is a massive positive, but I guess they're maybe a tiny bit behind, and it's different because it's not the main sport. It's not the main thing. If you go to America, unless you're talking down the south, Florida, California, or in the suburbs where there's a large kind of Latino or Hispanic community, aside from that, you're not seeing people out, kicking a football around. And you don't really see that in the UK much anymore, to be honest. But certainly in America, that's never been the case. So you've got players that come through and do a lot of ball mastery. So that's how they kind of get into the game, by practicing with the ball themselves at home, maybe being inspired by a coach at practice or by players on the TV, but working hard at home on their foot skills and stuff like that. But then when it comes to maybe decision making in the game and the tactical awareness side of the game and working when there's 3s and 4s and 5s, it's not just you and the ball, then they might kind of fall down in that respect. But as I mentioned, like there's some top players coming through in America, some technical kind of geniuses, because they've got such great ball control, because they've been there, because they love the game and they practice it every kind of day, doing ball mastery. There's certainly a number of players that I've coached that I've seen do that, and turn into very, very promising young players.
That links nicely onto a topic I do want to talk about, and I think you did mention earlier you did a role with Cuerva. So do you mind just expanding on that? What happened? I know we're jumping probably beyond your Aldershot stuff here at the moment, but I just want to find out, and then we'll come back to Aldershot.
Yeah, Cuerva I worked at briefly for probably about 4 or 5 months when I was in the UK. I'm not a huge advocate of the unopposed side of the game. I do think 1v1 is very, very important. I've always been a big 1v1 advocate and believer, especially in the foundation phase, especially with players kind of 13 and under. I think it's massive. I think there's so much kind of transfer from 1v1 skills, all types of 1v1s as well, back to pressure, attacking diagonally, side to side, attacking face on, 1v1 when the player's running at you, when you're getting pressed. So like what a centre back or a holding midfielder might have to come up against, versus a 1v1 that a winger or a forward or an attacking midfielder would come into contact with, where you've got the ball and you're running at a player. There's so many different types of 1v1, and I think it's so important. And I don't think there's many kind of world-class or even professional players that don't have a great kind of 1v1 skill set. So I'm a big believer in that. I just think, and even like ball mastery, I think that there's certainly a place for it, and it can certainly develop a player in terms of their coordination and ball manipulation on both feet, which is very, very important. Like I said, for me, there's not a top player that doesn't have brilliant ball mastery and ball manipulation skills. I just think with Cuerva, I found it very, very rigid. The kind of coaching program, very rigid. There was very little room for maneuver in terms of working with different ages, different abilities. Sometimes you were kind of put in square pegs and round holes where you had to follow this certain program of work, even though it wasn't, maybe the ideal for the player. However, I took away some great kind of technical points and some great practices and some great individual kind of ball mastery skills and 1v1 skills away from working with Querb, and worked with some very, very good coaches as well. So yeah, it's a massive debate in football, and I think there's people at both ends of the spectrum. And to be honest, like anything in life, if you're at one end of the spectrum, that you're probably wrong, to be quite honest. So I think you can definitely use that kind of unopposed technical grooving, but as long as you marry it up with a lot of decision making on the ball, because that's what football's about at the end of the day, making decisions, whether that's in a full 11v11 scenario or just with opposition, 1v1, 2v1, 3v2. I think that's massive. So yeah.
Good. I want to go back to your Aldershot experience. Talk to me about that. How did you come about that? Like how did that opportunity happen? And then I guess really you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you was with the under-13s, but you also had the opportunity to assist with the under-23s and the under-18s, which must have been a great experience.
Yeah, so after I come back from America, summer 2018, I applied obviously for lots of coaching roles in the UK. I thought it was time to sort of come back. I'd maybe learn all there was to learn, maybe not, but I felt like to really accelerate my own development as a coach, I had to come away from an environment where there were things that would potentially make me my standards slip, where people around you aren't holding themselves to very, very high standards in terms of coaching. And obviously I was delivering a lot of the CPD and stuff like that. So, if I'm the person kind of giving out information, it's not always ideal in terms of pushing yourself on and learning yourself. So, for me, it was kind of a no-brainer to come back to the UK and develop that way, because it's obviously the home of football and probably maybe the home of coaching as well. Like there's some top coaches and top player developers in and around London in particular. That's where my experience is. So yeah, I applied for the role at Aldershot, and Ross, the academy manager, gave me a call and invited me down for a trial session. And yeah, I got the role coaching with the under-13s. And then on the side of that, they needed someone to assist with the 18s and 23s just for a few months. So I did that. For a few months alongside my role with the 13s as well. But I was actually with the 13s for about 18 months, just over a year and a half. And they were a brilliant group, a top group. Probably, and I think I can say this, probably the best group, or one of the best certainly in the academy. Not down to me at all. I inherited some very, very good players, and
I'm sure you get credited for it.
Academy, and the academy brought in some good players as well to come into that age group, and so that was a fantastic experience working with those players, and those players are going to go on to reach very high levels, I'm sure, within the game. Some real talented players, a great group to work with, and potentially my most, or certainly up there, one of the most enjoyable experience I've had coaching was working with that group, really testing myself. And it's a great age to work with, because obviously you can marry that player development side of the game and the 1v1 side of the game, with also, developing the players kind of in terms of their decision making and tactically, and, working in more of a system, and working in units of 3 and 4 versus where, like I said, with younger age groups, I think there should be more of a 1v1, 2v2 focus. So, working at Aldershot definitely pushed me on as a coach, working alongside some very, very good coaches as well. And then, working with like the 18s and 23s was brilliant, personally as well, from a kind of delivery standpoint, working with players that were older. They're kind of the oldest players I've worked with. I've worked briefly with the 17s and 18s in the States, but not for an extended period. So that was a good experience. like watching players that I'd coach play in the FA Youth Cup and things like that. It was brilliant, and those players are starting to push into the first team now. So
Wow.
there's the first team manager, Danny Searle, to be fair, has shown an interest in playing youth players or giving them a chance or putting them in like the FA Vars, for example, or FA Trophy, sorry, for example, and going to Youth Cup games and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a few individuals now that have signed pro contracts with the first team and train and play and have got first team minutes in the National League. So, seeing players that I've worked with and players that I've got to know go and do that is, yeah, it's fantastic. It's awesome.
Yeah, I bet that must feel quite special, and as you say, I'm sure that's really nice to see them on TV, or have a look and see that they're, if you're following the game on Twitter or something like that, you see that they're in the squad. That must give you a bit of a buzz.
Yeah, definitely. I think like most Saturdays, I'd kind of check the team news and stuff and see or hear about on a Thursday or Friday what players are playing with the first team or in the first team squad or travelling away with the first team. And yeah, it was a really, really good club to work for from that extent. Like, I know if you're working essentially at a high level, at a Premier League academy or Category 1 academy, for example, then the first team or even the 18s and 23s don't want anything to do with the younger age groups, and there's no kind of way that a younger age group coach can even like go and watch training with the 23s or first team, let alone go and deliver and be a part of it. So yeah, the fact that I was given that opportunity to work at Aldershot in like a good academy with good players and with some really down to earth people and coaches and under a good academy manager, that was yeah, it was a brilliant experience, and I was really, really kind of lucky to have that alongside my other coaching when I first come back to the UK.
Was there any kind of pressure with? I'm gonna start with the younger ones, because I would imagine as you kind of mentioned they're a good group. Did you ever feel that there was any pressure in terms of, again, I guess results, but more so their development? Did you feel any pressure from the club, parents, or the players themselves?
Yeah, I think I was very, very lucky. Like at Aldershot, the academy manager and I shared very much the same philosophy in terms of development first over winning, and kind of what was best in terms of session design and in terms of game day coaching. What the best way to conduct yourself was to get development in terms of equal playing time and rotation of positions and playing good football, playing with the ball on the floor, and encouraging dribbling at the younger age groups in particular, encouraging 1v1, encouraging working with the ball in tight areas. Yeah, I was very lucky to that extent. And then obviously it was very much a challenge, especially at first. Like, I think, to be honest, in the past, because the academy manager was quite new when I come in as well. I think in the past, the group and the parents weren't used to what we were trying to do in terms of playing out from the back, in terms of equal playing time and all that kind of stuff that I just mentioned. They weren't as used to that. So obviously when they're not as educated and then they see a coach doing that, there might be a lot of questions thrown up if they're not used to it. So again, it's a massive push in terms of educating the parents and educating the players into why you're doing those things and why you're making those decisions, and what they need to do to kind of what you go forward and improve. Yeah, it's different. So there's some pressure to an extent, but I think just like life and football, it's all about creating relationships with people. And I think if you can build a certain level of trust with the parents and with the players, and that they can see that you're doing the right thing by them, your heart's in the right place, and they understand why you're doing what you're doing, then I think that kind of pressure naturally goes away.
And naturally, sort of now looking at the other end, the 18s to 23s, was there any sort of internal challenges, so challenges that you had to face, basically mentally, with yourself, in terms of working with a group that you hadn't worked with before, an age group that you also hadn't worked with before, in an environment that is obviously totally different?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Uh, yeah, there were in our challenges working with kind of older players with not being so many years older than myself and stuff. Maybe kind of gaining the respect of all players initially, and putting on practices that are going to challenge them and push them, and coaching in a slightly different manner, and coaching in a way that they're not too unfamiliar with. I think with younger players it's easy. Like for example, if you've got under sevens group like I first had, they've never really been coached in their lives, so you can do anything, and they'd kind of take it as read and take it as given, and hopefully go along with it. But if you're coaching an older age group, or adults, they're going to have in their head what they've done in the past a lot more, and kind of compare you to what they've seen before. So yeah, maybe if you step too far away from that as a coach, then the players might not fully kind of understand that, if that kind of makes sense. So in terms of um like for example, driving a session maybe like with your voice, or putting on certain types of practices, if you're doing other things like possession practices when they might not have done that before, or things like that, then yeah, obviously you're giving the players what they're kind of not used to. So straight away that's gonna take them out of their comfort zone, but also maybe make them question you as a coach. But I think like with anything, if a player sees that you're a good person and you want to do the right by them, and that you've got a lot of integrity about you, and you do have some knowledge in the game, then I think over a kind of a longer period, they certainly respect that, and they certainly kind of see that. So yeah, that initially there definitely were some challenges in terms of getting all the players on board with like my style and stuff like that. But yeah, and like I said, like there's some very, very good players and good people in that group that I still kind of keep in contact with and watch their progress and stuff. Um, so yeah, I kind of learned to deal with those challenges very, very quickly. But certainly I'd put that down working with under 18 and under 23 players. I put that down along with, flying out to America, or doing the refereeing, or throwing myself into coaching completely new, or coming out here to Sweden, for example, in terms of a list of some obstacles that I've maybe had to overcome that have made me better as a coach.
Yeah, fantastic obstacles as well. Like they're really great sort of landmarks, and that kind of shines a light on what you've achieved. So that's fantastic. I guess the last real question in terms of the order shot bit before we come on to ASL and then where you are now. The obviously the working with the older players, and like you mentioned, you had to win their respect, earn their respect. Was there anything you did in the short term to kind of help improve that, or help speed that process up at all?
Sorry. In terms of what you cut out for a second.
Oh, sorry. So I meant in terms of you working with the older players, and you said about having to win their respect or earn their respect. Was there anything that you did, whether that be in training or just generally off the pitch, to earn their respect quicker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's a good question. I think first part is maybe look at the coaches are around you, the other coaches that I was working with. I worked with, some good coaches. The academy manager worked with those age groups as well, and another coach, a PDP lead as well. So yeah, I kind of saw how they coached, and I learned off them, very experienced, qualified coaches, and I kind of tried to mirror what they did to a certain extent, but still be myself as a coach, but kind of do what they did in terms of maybe session design, or how they would be during the session and stuff like that. And I think in general, in terms of coaching, at all ages and levels, like off the pitch or whenever you get a chance, like building bridges and building relationships with the players is vitally important. It's really, really important, because I think a player is more likely to have trust in you if they can see that you're a good person, or if you can create some sort of dialogue with them away from the game and away from football. about other things, about their family life or what they've been up to, or if it's a younger player, how their day was at school and stuff like that. You know, if you can get those conversations going and create relationships that way, then, you know, once you step on the pitch, I think they'll have a lot more trust in what you're doing, and show, you know, kind of more of a respect towards you and your knowledge, and take things on board, and make kind of life easier for you as a coach. So yeah, certainly that having those conversations and building a trust with the players is vitally important, in my opinion.
And that brings us to the end of this episode, part one of Tristan's coaching journey. And I hope you've enjoyed it so far. It's been fascinating for me to interview him. And as I say, part two is up next. What you can do in the meantime, you can, of course, make sure that you don't miss out on part two by subscribing to the Halftime Cuppa Coaches Club podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and if you don't like doing either of those, you can of course follow it on our website as well, halftimecuppa.com. And you can follow Tristan on Twitter using his handle at Tristan T Coach, all one word. Go and follow him. As you'll hear at the end of part two, he's very open to giving some support to you guys and any questions you may have off the back of this podcast. So if you are interested, by all means reach out to him. He's a great guy, a great coach, as I'm sure you picked up from this podcast. You can of course follow us on Twitter as well at halftime_cuppa, and you can also follow my personal account at DannyCook1996. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.